Hi everybody. Today I'm going to be making blueberry ricotta cake. Now, I have only made this recipe one other time, so hope it turns out as good as it did the first time. So, just very quickly, I already kind of have my ingredients preset here. So, I'm just going to show you what I got here. If I can show you that correctly. In there, I've got, well, the recipe calls for 10 tablespoons, but I've got 20 tablespoons because I'm doubling. So it's 20 tablespoons of butter at room temperature, and also I've got 2 cups of sugar in there as well. And so then I've also got set up here, I've got some eggs, I've got sour cream, I've got lemon zest, I've got baking powder, I've got ricotta cheese, and then of course vanilla, salt, and flour, but I'll get to all that in a second here. So let me go ahead and just prop you up here. All right, hopefully you can still hear me okay. So I've got the butter and the sugar in here already mixing, or I'm gonna be starting mixing this here in a second. And the we have our commercial KitchenAid mixer here, which I absolutely love. Now, did you guys hear that it's an actual thing to name your KitchenAid mixer? I didn't know this until I started talking to my daughters a couple months ago about my KitchenAid mixer that is back in St. Paul that my daughter uses, and we were trying to come up with a name for it. Well, one day I was using our mixer, actually last week, and all of a sudden the name Greta popped into my head. No idea why. I have a feeling the KitchenAid mixer actually was screaming at me to name her. So you will hear me call her Greta because apparently that's the name that I popped into my head, so that's the name she's getting. So Greta here is going to be mixing the butter and the sugar for 3 minutes on medium. So I'm going to go ahead and get that going here. All right, and every once in a while I'm going to have to just kind of mix in there as well with the spatula to make sure it's going well. And in the meantime, what I'm going to do is that in here I have 2.5 cups of flour, but again, that's because I'm doubling the recipe. So really the recipe is 1.25 cup of flour. And then I've also got my baking powder here. So I've got my baking powder, which I have 2 tablespoons, but again, the recipe is 1 tablespoon that I'm going to put in there. And then also just some kosher salt that I have. And it's just kind of a few sprinkles. Now, I know I don't have gloves on, but I thoroughly washed my hands before starting this, so no worries there with that. And now I'm gonna go ahead and mix up my flour, my salt, and my baking powder while I'm waiting for my mixer to kind of do its thing. I should say while Greta's doing her thing, but it's actually mixing up really nicely, so I don't even have to use the spatula to try to get it to pick up its sides. So, but what I'm trying to do is get that to a smooth texture. It's actually looking pretty good. So, I'm going to go ahead, I know it hasn't been 3 minutes, but sometimes I'm not very patient. So, what I need to do now is I need to now mix the eggs in one at a time. Now I put all 6 in this bowl. The recipe calls for 3 eggs, but again I'm doubling it, so we've got 6 eggs in here. And I'm just going to try to get them in as best I can, thinking 1 at a time, but sometimes 2 will pop out. But that's just because I didn't want to use 6 different bowls. So again, I'm just plopping them in there 1 at a time until it gets well mixed. All right, that looks pretty good. And then now, because this is now mixing in and it's looking really good, now I'm going to be adding in the ricotta cheese. It calls for 1 cup of ricotta cheese, but because I'm doubling it, I will use 2 cups. And I'll just pour it in there. also need to put in my sour cream. Now the sour cream is 1 tablespoon is the recipe, so I have 2 tablespoons here that I'm going to be putting in. All right, and then I also have, I need 2 teaspoons. So the recipe was 1 teaspoon, so I need 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And then I also need 1 teaspoon of lemon zest. So I've got lemon zest right here. I've got 2 teaspoons of it. All right, that's looking really good. So now I'm gonna actually kind of bring this down to just more of a low kind of stir. Now, I now mixed my flour, my baking powder, my salt all in here together. So now I need to just start putting it into this kind of slowly. So I'm just gonna add a little bit at a time. Because I'm using too big of a bowl, I'm actually making a mess. It's dropping on the other side there. And of course I'll have to clean that up, because if any of you know my dad, Chef Jerry, he hates a dirty kitchen. So I will have to make sure that I get that flour wiped up so there'll be no evidence that I spilled flour all over the place. All right, that is in there. Now, one thing I actually forgot to mention as well in the beginning is that what I also did is, so this recipe calls to use a 9-inch springform pan. I'm going to be making these because we're going to a conference that we're going to be taking these to, and I want to make it more of a sample size bite and not using like a springform while I make, you know, we're kind of like pie cut shapes. So I'm using smaller cake pans that I had to first grease and then flour it. So I'm actually using 3 of these that I've already done, and I've got the oven preheating at 350. All right, so this is looking pretty good. Sorry, forgot to grab my blueberries that I've already pre-rinsed my blueberries. So that's a nice handy thing with this having these little holes in the bottom, is that you can easily kind of pre-rinse your blueberries. And then what I need to do now is go ahead and stop this from Greta from doing her magic. And of course we've got the paddle mixer for the KitchenAid is what we're using for this. All right, and now I'm just gonna clean off the paddle here a little bit. Make sure I get as much as I possibly can. All right, that is looking good. So I'll just make sure that that's all nicely mixed before I put in my blueberries. Now the blueberries I'm putting in is 12 ounces of blueberries for 1 serving. So I'm doing 24 ounces of blueberries. So I'm gonna have a lot of blueberries in here. But I'm not putting them all in the batter. I'm gonna be putting most of it in the batter, but then some of it I leave on the outside because I need to put them in then on the top of the cake. So what I'll do is put all of those in there. And now I'm just gonna mix it. Well, really fold it. I'm gonna fold it in. I don't wanna mix it because I don't wanna crush the berries. I want to try to leave them whole as I can. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try as best I can to put these as evenly as possible as I can in each of my 3 pans that I have here. So there is some eyeballing that I'm doing here, but I think it's going to come out. I think it's going to come out pretty even. All right. So I just spread it a little bit. Make sure it's nice and even. I'm gonna make sure I have enough consistency in each of these, but I'm not gonna bore you with that part. And like I said, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna take these blueberries in and I'm gonna just kind of line them up straight on top of this. Put it in the oven, and then I'm gonna bake it for 45 minutes. I will test it though. I probably won't do these at a full 45 minutes because these are smaller pans, so it's just gonna cook quicker. So I'll check them after about 30 minutes just to make sure that they're fully cooked. Now, I will go ahead and record a second video once I am done with baking them, and I'll show you what they look like. Thank you. All right, guys, my blueberry ricotta cake is all done. And I gotta say, it looks pretty darn good. Now, as you can see, there's a little piece missing right there. That's because I cut that out. And I put it on the plate so I could kind of show you what it looks like. It looks very good. So now what I'll do is actually I'll finish it off by putting a little bit of powdered sugar on it. And then that way you can serve it as a breakfast item. You can also serve this as a dessert. So you can serve that either as a breakfast item with using just some powdered sugar on it and, you know, some fruit maybe around it, some, of course, blueberries, but you can use some other things as well. You can also do this as an actual cake. So what I would probably do for breakfast is put maybe some lemon drizzle glaze on it. So make some glaze and put the glaze on it. That would be a nice breakfast item. Aside, I would probably also just serve it with the powdered sugar on it as well. And then if you're going to do it as a dessert, you could probably then, I did it as a dessert actually last week, and I put some whipped cream on it, and then just a dab of whipped cream on the top of it, and then I put a little blueberry on top of it as well, and it looked really cute, and along with the powdered sugar. So yeah, you could use it for whatever you'd like, but I will be taking a bite of it here in a second, but I gotta say, it looks pretty darn good. Enjoy.